Hello, hello, testing. Okay, so I'm gonna be writing a book. I do not know the title yet. um, and I'm just gonna be documenting my thinking, my thought process, and this is both for myself and I guess for people interested in my ideas on how I'd like to write this book. So first, it's gonna be a book set in the future, and it's gonna be based on predictions that I'm making today. Look at the date, bottom right. I started writing this. I don't even remember. I think it was June, maybe June when I started writing this. This is based in the future, and there's like these predictions that I'm going to be making today from things I've seen on the media, social media, the news, and try to make a book out of it to predict the future. So it's gonna be it's gonna also be like a little bit some of it's gonna be fiction, some of it is gonna be stuff that I actually believe could happen, and some of it might just straight up be fake, like I made it up. But it's still gonna be an interesting read, an interesting thought experiment to think about. And so here's the setting. It's gonna be in Pacific Northwest. I've already decided the town. It's gonna be this place called Beaver, Washington. Small town on the Olympic Peninsula here in Washington State. Here off the southwest coast of Lake Pleasant here, which is an interesting town. It's only a town of 500 people. Or 400 people. This is gonna be in the future, so I'm gonna increase like population sizes just a tad. In terms of future, I don't know what kind of dates I'm thinking about. I think I'm being be a little bit vague about that. And that'll be good. So the first thing, when I think so, I've never written a book before, so this is all new to me. But the first thing you have to do is, I'm assuming, you have to come up with a why you're writing this. So for me, it's gonna be about themes about knowledge, time, identity, big versus small. So it's gonna be like a David versus Goliath scenario. Like, can the micro affect the macro? Can changing yourself change the world, kind of thing, in the face of complete chaos. And that's the idea. Identity is also a big thing, like most novels. Time as well, and knowledge is a big one here too. I don't know if I'll be able to get through all these, but you'll see in like the I guess you call it the prologue, before the actual story starts. I'll use this theme: big versus small. Oops. So here's a plot chart. First setting, it's gonna be in the future, in the Pacific Northwest. Exposition, here's a predictions basically. So the GCC has collapsed, cheap energy is now concept of the past. And nationalism has run its course, there's civil conflict everywhere. Russia is expanding, China's in conflict with its neighbors, and the US is in civil conflict. But it's not like a civil war where armies traditionally march against each other. It's gonna be a little simmer, basically, or small parties fighting amongst each other for control. Not really warlords, because I do maintain a stable government in this story, but a somewhat stable government, I'd like to say. But there is still like some kind of resistance towards it because people no longer have faith in the U.S. Idea anymore. That's the idea. And over 1 billion people have died because of the lack of fertilizer, mostly from starvation. Over 1/8 of the population of the globe, mostly in Asian countries. And this is our protagonist. So I wrote character things below this plot chart. Our protagonist is going to be a 30-year-old trying to survive in a cabin in the Pacific Northwest. So it's basically like this individualist kind of person He's gonna be a hermit basically, but he's also has this duality to him where he still interacts with the outside world to him, but he's not like fully invested in it. So he gets to be an outside observer, I think almost, which is interesting. But he's gonna be affected by this conflict stuff. He's not just only gonna be an observer; he's also gonna be a part of the play. It's not a play; it's a novel, but you get the idea. So the conflict is going to be the antagonist being the government, and you see like use of AI, drones, surveillance, all that stuff. And questions always about allegiance. That's spelled wrong. And all the use of AI with drones, and basically the idea that AI surveillance is used to provide peace and safety. That's the idea, isn't it? To people. If that's good or bad, that's gonna be debated too, I think. Yeah, the national debt's defaulted, but basically it's all turned to chaos. But it's not complete chaos because there's still like governing bodies in the U.S. It's an interesting idea. It's not like the first Civil War where it was a split between a geographic line. Now it's going to be an ideological split, which basically like for Washington State in particular, you're going to be seeing clumps of I wouldn't be surprised if you saw communists rise up in Seattle somehow, Portland as well, and then the I-5 corridor would have some kind of communist socialist influence if there was a second American Civil War. So if you were all the way in the northwestern corner here, and where's the lake at? Here, Pleasant Lake or Lake Pleasant. You would be isolated from that kind of thing, wouldn't you? Because you're on a Highway 101 here, and you're not really getting that kind of contact over here. Not yet, at least. Olympia's here, the capital. But this I-5 corridor, this is gonna be where it spreads, basically. But there's gonna be other groups, other warlords, factions, if you will, that try to oppose that. And this is just gonna be like one isolated incident. It's gonna be happening over the country, but it's gonna be different for every state, of course. And maybe that's an opportunity for different books. And maybe the possibility of discussing this situation in the Middle East, or some prediction regarding greater Israel. Just anything like that would be possible in sequels. Because this story does go into it goes from the micro to the macro, and then it asks question: can the micro change the macro? I think that's going to be my goal here with that. Oh yes, it's going to be a continuous conflict, like years, decades maybe. So this is like a typical terrorist attack, bomb going off in a government building in Olympia. And then like typical stuff, like this is something that would happen in the French Revolution or Hitler's Germany, where a neighbor can just tattletale and call the authorities and get you sent to like a camp, like that kind of thing. And like the Constitution's been suspended, that kind of thing. So there's no free speech anymore because you need safety, and if there's people protesting in the streets, that's not very safe if you want to maintain stability in a country. So that's the idea there. Yeah. So that's our protagonist's goal. He only wants to survive, but he's gonna discover that to survive, you're gonna have to take well, it's gonna be an interesting dynamic when he meets this warlord that he's gonna meet. I don't even know if if it should be called warlords. I don't know if I guess that's appropriate. I mean, what else are you gonna call them? It's gonna be interesting. No fuel, million starve. North America, the so-called technate, maintains self-sufficiency. So yes, there will be stability in that sense that federally there will still be military because that's basically impossible to take out. There will be international like foreign politics, but or the U.S. is going to maintain the Donroe policy currently, which is no one's allowed to go into the Western Hemisphere without U.S. permission to assert influence over it without American permission. Basically, that prevents the Europeans from coming in, Asians coming in, anything like that. That's why we've taken over Venezuela. And in this scenario, I'm saying that we've taken over Canada. We've taken over Mexico for labor, Canada for natural resources, of course, Venezuela for oil, all these Central American countries, Cuba, that's also coming up soon in recent politics. That's where we're, that's the technate. That's self-sufficiency in the northern hemisphere, Western hemisphere here. And basically everything, all these other countries are going to burn. That's what's going to happen because, and the U.S. will fund it because they want to fund both sides because that will aid our production, our industry here in the U.S. If you're able to sell weapons to people that will buy them with money, then it's just infinite money basically. And they could start wars between, they could fund wars between Germany and Russia, basically. They could do the same thing with what they're doing with Ukraine right now, Ukraine and Russia. They could sell weapons to Ukraine. That's how the military-industrial complex makes its money. Nope. Yes, the U.S. government still maintains its military force. Political extremes grow, but the government's still powerful. Because it's basically impossible to take it down, the U.S. government, because the U.S. government is so big and powerful that there's like no real way to take it down unless it's within. I mean, the U.S. government, they have nukes. Like if the U.S. government really felt like it was threatened in that way, like nuking the American people, but would be, I don't know if that would be an option or even like a thing that'd be proposed. But we have to keep it like an open mind. We have to be imaginative when we write. So anything can happen. That's going to be my my idea. I'm not saying that'll be in the story about nuking like resistance fighters. I don't even know if that's plausible, but I think anything is possible, I guess. That was very contradictory. But yeah, I think you understand what I mean. We have to be very open, imaginative about things. Really try and make an interesting story here. So here's a rising action, and if you don't understand a plot chart, here is a plot chart diagram that we could use. So we just went through the exposition. Here, let's do a different one. I have to open it in a new tab. I'll open the image in a new tab. Oh, okay. I guess I just downloaded it here. So we did the exposition. That was the setting. We did the conflict, which is government. And then we're in the rising action now. So, rising action, another character is introduced. This is the warlord figure, Josiah Hallman, a Sternberg character. So if you're not familiar with Sternberg, he's going to be the guy that I'm going to base this guy off of. So this is Roman von Ungert Sternberg. And if you're unfamiliar with this guy's story, he's pretty crazy. In 1921, he was, I think he was shot, yeah. And he was a warlord. He was an independent warlord, and he basically took over Mongolia during the Russian Civil War, which is pretty crazy to see. First World War, Russian Civil War. restoration of our Mongolian independence. So this guy basically took over Mongolia. Yeah, he only had like 1,500 men with him, and he basically took over the entire Mongolia. So that's gonna be like my figure, and this guy's like, he's like a really interesting figure. If you want, you could really dive deep into his thinking, his thoughts. He's really interesting. But this guy's gonna be roughly based around him, Josiah Hallman. He'd be a powerful warlord who seeks to reunite the Pacific Northwest, free the populace of the drone terror. E-drone terror. They ride horses to avoid detection, and are free from self-driving technology because that is, tracking also. That's how they could maintain security, OPSEC, and they carry many weapons. And he basically asks him, "Are you with me or are you against me?" So the protagonist is with him, and this is gonna be all sorted out when I actually write this scene, because I do want him to be somewhat hesitant. I think, because I guess if I was Henry, which is the name of our protagonist, I don't know if I'd just sign up to do what they do. But if they came with weapons, then that might make me think differently. So maybe that might be the motivating factor for Henry. So Hallman has many victories with the protagonist, and Hallman is captured by government forces. So this is going to be another friction point between our protagonist and the antagonist. So the protagonist, he's going to take control, and he leads the force to break him out. But he fails and is captured as well. So that's going to be the twist there. Both are held in a high security prison with advanced technology. Yep. And they're tortured too, to betray their group. And then there's an insider, a special forces officer. So this may seem like completely like a complete curveball, but I think it makes sense that within the U.S. government, especially within like military special forces, there are groups or individuals who support different causes within the Civil War, and that's what's happening. So how is the government able to? So a question here: how is the government able to maintain its stability while a civil war is going on? And really, I think it's about maintaining the people who are indifferent or indecisive and choosing a side. That's how they keep people in line. They maintain the status quo by doing that. And you've seen it in previous history. People just don't care sometimes. They don't want to die for something that they don't really care about, really. And that's what they're going to exploit. That's my idea. So they're going to have the normies, basically. Normies. They'll side with the government just because they don't want to die. And that's fair. Like, but I don't want to die. But ultimately, you do have to oppose stuff that is not right. So it's an interesting idea. So this special forces officer, he's able to break them open out of their jail cells. Oops. And he draws a start of Ichthus. I don't know about this part. This was something I just thought of. If you don't know what Ichthus is, fish symbol, I guess. So what happened in the Rome, the early Christians, they drew like this line here, this line in the sand like that, like a curve, sort of like a smile on a smiley face. And then the other person, because this involves two people, the other person was supposed to draw the other end like this. to make a fish, and that's how they identified themselves during the early church, so they wouldn't get like caught or whatever. So that's how they identified themselves between each other, which is an interesting story. I wanted to utilize that here with this because it is like a way to symbolize resistance in the face of a very powerful enemy. In the case of the early Christians, it was Rome. In the case here, it is the tyrannical government. So I don't know if this is going to be appropriate though, because Christianity is the dominant religion in the U.S. I don't know how many people know or understand the story about the Ichthus, but it might be difficult to utilize in that way. Maybe I'm overthinking it and it's a good idea, but I don't know. We'll see how I'm able to execute it in a scene. Yeah, and he confirms by going to their different cells. First, nonverbal agreement with Holland. Yeah. And then here's another storyline. Okay. This is Dylan McGill's backstory, basically. And I don't know if... I think this storyline is kind of... This might be just another book, honestly. But I think what we'll have to do is Dylan McGill is just going to have an introductory kind of backstory in the writing as me as the narrator, of course, just writing his story instead of going through the story while this other story is going on about this. And if possible, I'd like to write an entire book on what this guy does, Dylan McGill, because the U.S. military is going to go into a very interesting period as the U.S. invades Canada, invades Cuba, further integrates Venezuela, invades Mexico, Colombia, Nicaragua, or the other Central American country, Guatemala, Belize, Honduras, El Salvador, Costa Rica, Panama especially important, and just integrating all that. And that creates power for these officers as they are the military occupation force, and that creates really interesting scenarios, I think. So he was drafted into the U.S. military. He took a tour in Greenland. I forgot Greenland as another one, as well as Canada as part of the occupation forces. And he continues his enlistment, applied for Green Berets, and he eventually rose to captain. So that's his story. And maybe I might just write an entire novel on what this guy does, because I think that's a cool idea. McGill's friends and colleagues in the military, fellow resistance members, helped him escape. And that's how that works. So here's a prison break. Storylines cross. Again, I don't know if I'll be able to write enough for that second storyline to make it like. Maybe I might be able to. I'm not sure yet. I'll have to find that out. And a coordinated attack. Yes. A handman of Hallman, Alex Abbott dies in the attack. Protagonist is allowed away by government forces, and the attack fails. Yes, and the government believes... I think I just made this up on the fly when I was writing this. The government believes the protagonist is an important leader in the resistance. Yeah, that makes sense, because he is not an important leader. He's just like a... He wrote... Well, it's like imposter syndrome almost for him, but the government actually believes him, because he rose to power not too long in, but I guess it'll work. This is all subject to change. Henry Daniel Taylor. So this name, I don't really talk about my names yet on why I believe what names should reflect about a character, what they should tell the reader. So this was I stole Henry from Thoreau. Why is my okay, there. Thoreau, Henry David Thoreau. This was the guy that I took the name Henry from. I didn't want to use Thoreau because that'd be too obvious, but Henry is like a good normal name, I think. Daniel in the Lion's Den, that kind of idea, I think. And Taylor, I think, was just a throwaway. Honestly, I still want to change this though. I just needed like a normal last name, because last names are like probably one of the more important parts of your name, because I think it shows legacy. Who was your past or your ancestors? Taylor, you have when you're looking at famous people, you have Taylor. You have wasn't there a president named Taylor? President Taylor, Zachary Taylor. He was a Mexican-American War veteran. Yeah. So he's a great leader. That'd be the idea there. Taylor, a leadership role. The actual name, meaning. Well, that's not very important. I feel like cutter of cloth, but we're thinking about Henry David Taylor, or sorry, President Zachary Taylor there, which is interesting. I think I'd like to change that. In my rough draft so far, I've only referred to him as Henry. I haven't introduced the full name yet because my character hasn't even talked to a single other character yet. It's just been him, and like my narrator voice basically. So all he wants to do is survive global crisis. However, he needs to stand and fight to protect those he loves most. So he's gonna be introduced to this warlord community, and he's gonna feel he's gonna feel at home basically there. He has no family that have been killed in a house fire. Still works in town, but he lives in the woods. So this is the duality that I want to include, where he's able to maintain his independence, but also be able to work in society. Because I think that's like kind of duality that is an interesting thing to analyze. And one day he's approached by resistance fighters. So keep in mind the geological position of where this is. This is where he's at. He's at the northwestern tip of the peninsula. And again, this is where the concentration of people are. If you're looking at population sizes in Washington State, this is where the population is. And that's where all the blue, they all vote blue here. So he's gonna be isolated from that city life there. Henry agrees, and they write out. Yeah, and he forms relationships. Here's his age, 30. Religion is gonna play an important part. Politics. When it comes to politics, I want him to be politically. I don't want him to be like politically extremist. I feel like. Here's the Bible story, Book of Job. That's what his story's based around. Because in the Book of Job, basically God takes away Job's everything. He used to be like the richest man in his neighborhood, or in his country, rather maybe his county, I guess. And then he had like 300 sheep, 500 cows, 400 goats, whatever. And then God just took it away from him. No house, no kids, no nothing. And then God like reveals to him what really matters, which is his relationship between God and him, and then God. So that's gonna be the idea with this Henry character, and all this should be dynamic through story. Yes, we don't want to. When I write this, I don't want to just put all this on without telling a story. So that's what I want to try to do. Josiah Hallman, Pacific Northwest Warlord 43. I don't know why I chose that number. I don't know why I chose that number. I think I just want like middle aged, because you don't want your warlord to be like 20 years old or 25 and completely stupid. That's the idea. You want someone who's wise, but also energetic enough to put that wisdom into practice through action. You don't want like a 70-year-old warlord that needs like his underlings to do all the work. You want someone who could do the work and have the wisdom enough to understand when to fight, when to run, basically. That's the idea. Traditional Protestant. And he's a theocrat. And the entire community is theocrat based. Because here's the political plot chart here. Constitutionalist, that's basically anyone who's still loyal to the Constitution in this case. And then there's conflict, and then out of this rise Christian theocrats. Because that's like before let's see. So there were like two schools of thought. And this is my understanding, and this is all speculation. There were two schools of thought when it came to America. There was the idea of a country that was a light on a hill, a church on a hill that was supposed to spread Christianity, basically. And then there was the idea of the Enlightenment ideals that we chose, that we originally chose, that held up life, liberty, pursuit of happiness. There was they said the word God sometimes in there, but they weren't really Christians. They were heretics because they believed in Unitarianism, and they were deists. So they didn't believe that God actually worked in the world. He's just a big clockmaker, basically, where he just creates the world and then lets it run until, I guess, it destroys itself. But that's how that works. And the idea here is that in the future, after the original Constitution and ideas of the Enlightenment have passed away, then you have the second school of thought take place, which is Christian theocracy, white Christian theocracy, that kind of idea. We'll just plot chart here. We go from evangelical Zionists, I guess, to traditionalists. And this is a really interesting idea because a lot of people online, they all like to go, they all like to simp for the Catholic Church, it feels like. And, I love Catholics. I don't have nothing against them. I'm a traditional Lutheran. And that goes along with like typical ideas like Israel is in the modern country of Israel isn't the country of Israel in the Bible, the ancient country that we need that, and the idea that we need to give billions of dollars to them for some religious purpose for some religious reason, just because they're the so-called cousins of Christians, is kind of silly to me. That's my viewpoint on that. So in terms of traditionalists, I could, if you're in Texas, New Mexico, Arizona, I could see Catholicism rising up here, like traditional Catholicism. So it's not only Protestants. C notes. So these are just notes on like things I've been thinking about on like a scene that I like. So this could be an empty office building in Seattle, because they could go there if they were to conduct a raid against another war party, warlord group, another faction. And we could have some metaphorical moments here in the empty office buildings. Need some water. Okay, let's go into my rough draft. I don't even have a full page yet. So this first section here. Let me just turn off the heater real quick. Okay. Been recording for 36 minutes. First section here is basically a prologue, and it's supposed to be well, I'm not gonna tell you what all this represents. Actually, I want to keep that somewhat secretive, because it's cool to speculate on the importance of this prologue. Yeah, I'll give you. You could pause here. You can read it for yourself. I think I'll leave this off here. And that's my first progress report. Today is July 7th. Oh, sorry, July 10th, 2026.